Thank you, everyone, for the attention that you are dedicating to me. So it's a very great pleasure for us to have so a lot of people today connected with us in order to attend our webinar about BTS Nirvana. So I think that we can start. So what is Nirvana? Nirvana is an innovative technology based on immersive virtual reality, where the patient can perform his rehabilitation treatment by interacting with the virtual environment. Nirvana is a medical system especially dedicated to patients with motor and cognitive disease, so it's widely used in the neurorehabilitation field. We have to take into account that the neurological patient is very delicate and he cannot stand invasive rehabilitation systems like glasses, gloves, or helmets that often are rejected by the subject. These virtual interactive systems are not so appropriate for the rehabilitation of people with motion and cognitive problems because they often can be invasive, not flexible, and they need the help of a specialist to be used. With Nirvana system, the patient enjoys the immersive experience because he can interact with the environment by watching, by touching, and listening to the reactions of his own movement. The movement is completely free. The patient can use also his hands if necessary, without any simulator like Avatar, for example. So this experience is what makes Nirvana a unique medical device. Moreover, looking at the traditional rehabilitative treatments, the patient gets bored while performing the therapy because he's not so involved in any challenging and rewarding activity. Also for the therapist, the evaluation of the patient performance is only qualitative because he doesn't have any quantitative measure of the performance. Comparing a conventional rehabilitative approach, like you can see here on your left side, to the innovative approach based on the virtual reality system. Here on the right, you have a typical scenario of Nirvana. We can see how the patient is not engaged. He is not so motivated while performing the motor task because, for example, he doesn't have any sensorial feedback, any reward based on what he's doing. Often, during the exercise execution, it's necessary to change the level of difficulty of the exercise, but the therapist doesn't have this possibility in real time, and he has to stop the exercise, modify, for example, the position of the target blocks with time spending, while the patient gets bored. On the contrary, in the virtual environment of Nirvana, the patient can experience the rehabilitative treatment with a multisensory stimulation, thanks to the visual feedback of the strings vibration, for example, or thanks to the audio feedback of the associated sound. Of course, in this way, the patient can adjust in real time his movement in order to get a better performance. Also, the therapist can manage easily this exercise, adjusting some parameters in real time. based on the residual capabilities of the patient. For example, he can modify the width of the strings in real time in order to make the exercise more difficult or simpler, but without any time spending. So it's very important. Nirvana is the perfect tool for all the rehabilitation centers that take care of patients of any age affected by motor and cognitive problems coming from a nervous system disease like stroke or traumatic brain injury, chronic and progressive neurological disease like Parkinson or multiple sclerosis. The rehabilitation therapy based on Nirvana system can lead to important therapeutic benefits in terms of motor and cognitive recovery. The motor recovery is demonstrated through enhanced coordination and motor control with higher execution speed, increased body strength, enhanced dexterity of upper and lower limbs, improved balance and trunk control, improved visual spatial capabilities like orientation and spatial cognition. As regards the cognitive recovery, it's demonstrated through an active participation and better level of concentration by the patient. Increased attention, memory skills, and language abilities. Enhanced visual perception and body awareness in the space. Better emotional state and reduced mental stress and anxiety, higher social interaction. The system can be used into different configuration, wall and floor projections, allowing the rehabilitation of any body segment in this way, upper limbs, lower limbs, and trunk. The system can be managed by a computer or a tablet or a smartphone through a web-based interface compatible with all devices and operative systems. So it's important. The doctor, the clinician, the therapist can control the system by using any device with any operative system. The patients are inserted into a database, okay, that allows to follow the history of the patient rehabilitation therapy over the time. And the doctor can create a specific therapy dedicated to that specific patient. The therapy is made up of different sessions of work where the doctor can fill in different exercises with different clinical goals and with different levels of difficulty in order to make always the exercise challenging and rewarding for the patient. Okay, so basically there are 6 different categories of exercises with different clinical goals because these exercises allow to work on different capabilities of the patient. So, for example, let's start from the first family. In the Sprites exercises, the patient has to reach a fixed target in the scenery. In order to transform this object or produce a sound. Thanks to these exercises, the patient can work on the organization of a finalized movement to reach, touch, and manipulate the object. In the hand exercises, the goal is very similar to the Sprite's ones, okay? Because the patient is still asked to reach an object in the scenery, but now the object is moving and can appear and disappear randomly in the scenery in order to stimulate also the reactivity of the patient, in addition to the organization of the finalized movement. Very similar, again, in the grasping family, okay, we find some exercises where the patient has to reach an object, but it is asked also to grasp the object in order to move the object into the scenery. In this way, it's possible to work also on the force development to carry the object without releasing the grasp, because if the patient lose the force and so lose the grasp, the object come back to its starting position. The motion typology includes exercises focused on movement quantity, so that the patient is motivated to cover the widest surface involving all the joints of the upper and lower limbs. The follow me typology, this one, requires the online motor control, because the patient is required to follow an object that can be a little animal, for example, that is moving in the scenery along precise trajectories. On the contrary, the patient can be followed by the object, by the animal. So the patient in this way is motivated to move so that the little animal, for example, can follow him. Finally, there is also the games typology that includes exercise performed in a game scenery mainly dedicated to children. Okay, as I said, the great advantage of Nirvana system is the possibility to change the level of difficulty while the patient is performing the exercise, avoiding to stop the exercise and increasing the level of efforts of the patient. Moreover, for each exercise, it's possible to give a score established on basis of different parameters. For example, the number of hit targets, the execution time within a fixed time window, and so on. So there are different parameters that can we take in consideration in order to establish a score to quantify the patient performance. So thanks to these metrics, the therapist has a quantification of the patient performance. And so he has a number in order to control the patient improvement over the time. The result of each exercise can be inserted into a report that can be customized and printed. In this example, you can see the cake diagram, where the green and the red areas are defined on basis of the level of success and failure reached by the patient during the exercise execution. Okay, let's summarize what we have just presented. So, why should the therapist use Nirvana system? Because thanks to Nirvana, it's possible to stimulate patient activity and motivation, customized rehabilitation programs adjusting exercises in real time, communicate with patient thanks to its simple, clear, and complete report, plan rehabilitation treatment for different body parts while with only one system. Thanks to Nirvana system, also the patient, so there are many advantages also for the patient, because the patient becomes the active protagonist of his rehabilitation program. The patient enjoys the rehabilitative treatment with multisensory stimulation and motivational support, and the patient can evaluate his performance success and increases his autonomy level. So let me close this first part of the presentation with this thing. So when the therapy is motivating and engaging for the patient, automatically the therapy will be more effective. Okay, now I would like to show some videos as an example of exercises. So in this first example, you are watching a Sprite exercise. So as I just explained before, in this exercise, the patient has to reach the target that are fixed in the scenery. In this way, the patient can transform the object, for example, from the moon to the sun, and also this transformation produce a sound, so the patient can receive visual and audio feedbacks. But the most important thing of this exercise is that the patient can work on the organization of the finalized movement, because he has to see the target. The patient has to create a correct movement to finalize in order to reach with a correct trajectory the target. Then the therapist can decide how to ask the patient to perform the exercise. Maybe by using only the upper limb, or maybe involving also the trunk movement. So we create the scenery, but the therapist can use his fantasy in order to make the exercise more rewarding and challenging for the patient. Okay, here we have another example. Okay, we have another example of Sprite exercise. In this case, you can see that now we are using the projection on the wall. So also the goal of the exercise is the same. So the child, in this case, has to reach the emoticon. In this case, we are working more with the lower limb. And so the most important thing, as I have just explained, is that the therapist can change the difficulty in real time. So, for example, we are starting with a good number of emoticon, okay? That from a sad face becomes an happy face, okay? But we can, for example, reduce the number of emoticons in order to increase, okay, the step length of the child. If we want to increase the difficulty and so make more challenging this exercise for the child, for the patient, okay? Also, in this case, maybe I think that you cannot hear the audio feedback from the video because of the streaming, okay? But when the patient touch the emoticon, so the emoticon change, okay? But the patient receive an audio feedback of louder, okay, by the emoticon. Also, the position in the scenery of the emoticon can be adjusted, can be changed based on which is the capability or which is the clinical goal of the exercise for the patient. So we can use horizontal, vertical, arched, or hemi-arched trajectory of the emoticons. Another exercise of the Sprites family. Okay, you can see, sorry, I stop just a moment. I would like to come back to the video. Okay, look. So another important feature that I have just said before, okay, so the software, so the control of the system can be managed, I said, by a computer, by a tablet, by a smartphone, okay? But the most important thing is that while the therapist, or if that it's necessary that the therapist is close to the patient, near to the patient in order to help him. And the patient and the therapist has the necessity to change in real time the difficulty level of the exercise. Is not necessary to stop the exercise, first of all. And so I have just said many times this concept. But also important is that the patient, the therapist has not to sit down at the desk, okay? But so the app can be available also on a tablet, on a smartphone, that the therapist can take with him, okay, during the performance, in order to change and control the exercise parameters by the phone or tablet. Okay. Also in this case, so the goal of this training is the spatial cognition and orientation skills to identify the position of the object to be achieved. So also in this case, we are working on the organization and finalized movement, okay, in order to reach, touch, okay, the object. You can see that the therapist can change the number of strings that give out, okay, reduce the number, or also increase the length of the strings. Okay, in this case, you are watching this this exercise, okay, on the wall projection, and the patient is sit down, okay, on a chair. But I would like to report the experience of some our customer. Imagine that instead of having the patient sit down on a chair, the patient is in a standing position, okay, close to the wall. I can make more, I can increase the length of the strings, and in that case, I can ask the patient to touch the string, maybe by flexing the hip, by flexing the knee, in order to work with a flex extension of the lower limb, okay, by using an exercise projected on the wall instead of the floor. Okay, the same exercise on the floor. Okay. In this case, we would like to recover the walking ability of the patient with balance control, okay? Also in this case, we can increase the number of guitar strings, okay? In order to reduce the distance or increase the difficulty level. I think that you know very well this exercise because it's a typical exercise performed in the rehabilitation gymnasium. Okay, and usually to do this exercise, the therapist put really some blocks in front of the patient, and the patient is asked to go over the real blocks. But you can understand immediately that the patient, based on which are his capabilities, okay, run the risk to fall down if he's not able to cross over, to go over the blocks, the real blocks. In this Nirvana exercise, we are working with the same clinical goal, but the patient is absolutely protected. So he doesn't run any risk. Okay, so this exercise is not dangerous for the patient. Okay, we can set also the sensibility of the strings in order to help the patient. So the string will move only if the movement of the patient foot is within a little space from the floor. Okay, if we go to increase this area, okay, we ask the patient to perform a higher flex extension movement of the limb. Okay, image another experience that I can report by using this scenery. Instead of using this exercise exactly like you are watching now in the video, so the patient can ask to walk like a snake, okay, among one string and the next one. Okay. Another example of Sprite exercise. In this case, okay, we are still working on the organization of a finalized movement in order to reach and touch the target, of course, okay? But in this case, we have a very high cognitive component. So In this case, we are going to work on the memory domain, okay? In particular, on the short-term memory. The number of cards can be changed in order to increase or reduce the difficulty of the exercise. And very similar, okay, in this case, we are working, we are going to associate the ability of spatial cognition and orientation to the organization and finalized movement. And in this case, we are also training the logical mathematical skills because we are working on the long-term memory, because the patient has to recover, okay, some information from his brain, okay, acquired in the past. Exactly like with the number we have with the alphabet. You can see, okay, you can see that the therapist can help always the patient, but the therapist can decide what the patient has to do in order to finalize the exercise. Okay. Here we have an example of grasping exercise. So as I said, in the grasping exercise, so the goal is very similar to the Sprite exercise because again, the patient has to reach an object, okay? But as you can see, okay, the patient is asked also to grasp the object in order to move into the scenery. So pay attention that in this exercise, we have also a very high component of visual skill, because in the center of the window, we have some ingredients, okay, that the patient has to recognize and has to discover in the scenery, because there are some other elements that can disturb, okay, the attention of the patient. So in this case, we are working on the finalization of the movement, but in addition, we have a very visual scan of the scenery and the possibility to work on the force development to carry the object without releasing the grasp. Because if the patient releases the grasp, the object can come back to the initial position. This is another scenery, but the goal it's the same. So instead of in the kitchen, here we have at the supermarket, and so the patient has a shopping list in the middle, and so he has to recognize, to look for the correct object in order to grasp them into the net. Okay, something about the exercise of the motion category. Okay, so do you remember what I said? The motion typology includes these exercises focused on the movement quantity, so that the patient, in this case, is motivated to cover, in this case, to clean the widest surface in order to discover the new image under the water. Okay. In this case, we are working on the coordination of all the body segments while performing this very wide movement. Okay, so the main clinical goal is the improvement of motor quantity. Okay, in the hand exercise, so I said that the goal is similar to the Sprite one because the patient is asked to reach an object in the scenery, okay? But in this case, the object is moving and can appear and disappear randomly in the scenery in order to stimulate the reactivity of the patient. So let me stop the second video and focus the attention first of all on the first video. Okay, so here we are working on the oculomotor coordination, rapid change of direction in order to achieve the object that appears randomly, okay, from different position. In this case, we have the mole that appears randomly from different holes, okay, and so okay, we by the software we can customize the speed difficulty, so the speed with which the mole can appear from the holes, okay, and so thanks to this exercise we have a very high stimulation of patient attention and mainly of patient reactivity. Okay, you can see now the same patient, okay, after 15 days of treatment. So pay attention. I'm not saying that this is the result thanks to a treatment performed by Nirvana system. But in this case, thanks to Nirvana system, we can highlight so the improvement that you can, of course, you can see, okay, of the patient. Okay, immediately what we can say about this second video. The patient is performing the exercise alone without the help of the therapist. And you can see also that also the reactivity of the patient, the velocity of his movement is increased. So we have we have a very good improvement of the patient performance. Okay. In the follow me typology, we are working on the residual motor skills associated with visual spatial abilities, orientation skills, and spatial cognition. The patient is interacting with some other objects that are moving in the scenery. Okay, the patient is required to follow an object, like in this video. In this case, the patient has to follow some precise trajectory, okay, defined by the little animal. Or in the second video, in the second example, on the contrary, is the patient that is following, that is followed by the object. And so the patient is motivated to move so that the little animal can follow him. You can see that in the corners of the scenery, there are some other pictures, okay, water or a little bone, okay. And so sometimes the therapist use real object instead of the virtual object of the scenery. In this case, we make more real the environment for the patient. Okay, I have finished my presentation. So first of all, thank you very much for your attention. And now, if you have some question, please write your question by chat, and with the help of my colleague Daniele, we can read the question for everyone, and I try to give the answer.
So thank you, Diana. Before going deep inside, just one quick thing. I see that Dr. Alexandros Tsenekidis, I'm sorry if I spell your name wrong, has the raised hand. Now I'm gonna raise down the hand if you have the question, because I think it's like an error because it was like this from the first time, from the moment. If you have a question, raise again and I will give you the word. So we have 3 questions from Dr. Cinzia Vigna. The first one is, could you give me the exact minimum and the maximum dimension of the area of projection or action? And
yes.
The second one, I'll tell you the 3 questions and then...
Yes.
So the second one is, do you need a screen or just a wall? I think we already answered, but we can go again there. And the third one is, I guess an internet connection is necessary or not?
Okay, thank you very much for these very interesting questions, because they allow me to give to everyone some important information related to the feature of our Nirvana system. Okay, first of all, the first question about the dimension of the area of projection. Usually, we suggest we go to cover both on the wall or on the floor an area more or less 3 meters, okay, per 2.5 meters, okay, but it depends on where we go to place the projection, okay, the projector, sorry, and which is the length of the projector. So the projectors that usually we include in the furniture, okay, are ultra so allows to create an area, okay, around 3 meters for 3 meters or 2.5 meters, both on the wall or on the floor. Okay, so we suggest to use for the wall projection a real wall and not a screen, because if the screen moves, so if the area of projection can move, so this can disturb and can modify the precision and the calibration of the system. Okay. Related to the internet connection, absolutely is not required, because in the furniture we include a net device. So you have the movement sensor, the projector, okay, the little PC, okay, and a net box that is the box that can create an internal network where each therapist can connect, okay, by using any browser, any tablet, any computer, okay. So on your computer, you need to have a network card, but you and so you can, in order to have a network, a Wi-Fi, for example, connection, and you can take the control of the system by using this internal network created by the net that BTS provides in the furniture.
Perfect. We have a fourth question by Dr. Cinzia Vigna, and
Yes.
is if we sell or rent the system, and about the cost. And I leave you this
Okay,
question.
usually, so we sell the system, and for cost information, I suggest to leave your email in order to write to sorry, in order my colleague that follow the commercial part can give you all the information based on which is the configuration with both projection on wall and floor, on only one projection. So there are different combination, and so for this type of information we can get in contact with you. So in particular, some colleagues of the commercial department can provide to you this information.
I think that with this answer, we already answered also to the question of Dr. Alexandros Tsenekidis that says, is this equipment is expensive? So this is the same question, so we will contact
Yes,
him.
so see, for any question related to the cost, please, it's not necessary, Daniele. I think that these guys write an email, because we can take in consideration their questions, okay? And we have the email address, the contact of these people, I think.
Sure, I agree 100%. And then we have Doctress Lorraine, I think, Martens from Belgium, that says, hi, is it possible to have a tryout of the Nirvana system in our center in Belgium?
Okay, so this is another decision that that I cannot take. So it's the commercial that can decide to do this eventually.
Yeah, definitely the commercial team will contact each and every one
Yes,
of you.
yes, yes.
And I think for the last question by now, I see also that Dr. Cinzia sent us the email, so we will get his email to the team. Dr. Nadine Chedid asks, can we save a patient database in the system? Thanks, Binu ATC Kuwait. Well, from Kuwait.
Ah, okay. Yes, of course. The system has a database. Okay, so any exercise, any session of work performed with the session, with the patient, okay, can be saved into the database, and the database, of course, is in the memory of the little mini PC included in the furniture.
Wonderful. By now, I can't see any more questions, so I think that we can just see if in the next 2 or 3 minutes there are any question anymore. What do you think, Engineer Diana?
Yes, I think, Daniele, that if there is no any other question, we can close and stop here this webinar, because I see that we took more or less 1 hour, and so I don't want to have more time from our attendees. Okay, and so if someone else has some question today, tomorrow, okay, so don't hesitate to contact us by email, okay, writing to marketing@btsbyengineering.com, Okay, and so we are here absolutely available to provide any type of information that you need, of course.
Just a quick reminder that I connect with the last question from always from Miss Vigna. And the question is if it's possible to see the webinar again. Of course, if it's possible, in the next days will be uploaded in our YouTube channel and will be sent to all of you as you registered to this webinar. So will be sent to all of you. So by my part,
Fantastic.
we are done. Diana, if
Okay.
you want to say bye-bye to our friends.
Okay, yes, bye bye. And thank you again for your attention. And so have a nice day.